Hey babes, we are here today to test not just one, but two foundations that I've been curious to try out. And one of these is the new Colorstay Full Cover Foundation in the squeezy tube by Revlon. And the other is one that I somehow just feel is very, very similar to this. And that is the Sephora Matte Perfection Foundation. Now, both of these have very, very similar claims. They are both matte. They both claim to be long wear. They both claim to feel very light or comfortable on the skin. Now, this one is oil-free, dermatologically tested, non-comedogenic, and the Revlon doesn't say anything about whether it's comedogenic, but I kind of feel that in this day and age, every foundation needs to be non-comedogenic. That's just a basic requirement. Now, since both of these are affordable, matte, full coverage, long wear foundations, I decided to just put these to the test, one on each side of the face, and show you how they wear down over the day. While these are both sort of in the affordable tier, I have to say that the Sephora Matte Perfection Foundation is cheaper than the Revlon by far. This is $25 retail at Sephora. If you buy this during the member sale, you get this at $20, just $20. The Revlon foundation is $33.90 standard retail price in Singapore. I got it on discount because there are frequent discounts at the drugstore, and I got it at about 28 plus. $28.90 or $28.50. It is still far more expensive than this. If you think about it, if you get this during the members sale, it is almost half the price of this. So yeah, there is something to be said about the incredible markup for drugstore foundations in Singapore. Yes, I'm talking to you, Revlon. These days, we know there are alternatives, so I'm gonna put both to the test regardless. For the Matte Perfection Foundation in Sephora, this is available in at least 10 to 15 shades. I saw 10 online and I counted 15 in the store. I might be wrong, but somewhere around there. With the Revlon, I saw only about 6 shades. I had trouble finding this even. In the worst drugstore that I went to, the shelf for Revlon was so cluttered that they basically didn't even have dedicated space for this foundation. They kind of just put 3 shades beside one foundation and 3 shades beside another foundation. So I was kind of disappointed by the lack of organization or thought put into this overall. And considering this is $8 to $9 more expensive than this, I was just not a very good first impression, shall we say. Anyway, I picked out 2 shades as best as I could. I ended up picking out 210 Sand Beige, which I think is sort of a neutral, warm, light shade. Just from hand swatches, this looks like it has a very grey undertone, but the next shade up would be a little bit too pale for me at this moment, and the next shade down, which was Golden, 310, I think, that was way too tan, so I have to make do with 210 and hope I don't look crazy. For the Sephora one, they seem to have quite a nice breakdown of shades. 25 Beige is a light neutral. There was a 23 which is a light yellow. 27 was like a peachy light shade. So I would think unless you have extremely pale or extremely dark skin, you will be able to find a shade that's somewhat close to you with the white undertone in the Sephora range. I'm sorry if I'm sounding more like I'm leaning towards the Sephora foundation at the moment. I'm not talking about the formula at all, but I really just have to say that everything from pricing to display to shade range, all the first impressions, this is just not cutting it right now. Texture-wise, they're a little bit different. The Revlon is sort of like a light, almost airy kind of a mousse feel on the skin. If you've tried Maybelline's Dream Mousse foundations, this has that kind of a feel. It goes on velvety, and I have to say the skin feel for this as you rub it on is very, very nice. The Sephora Matte Perfection Foundation is more of a typical cream, so it still smooths on the same way, but it almost dries down immediately into this very matte powder finish, so you have to work faster with this. The Revlon gives you a little bit more time to blend and play around with the product. Now that all that is said and done, I'm going to zoom you in and do the application. Just from the textures I swatched on my hand alone, I kind of feel like this will not be full coverage, but I might be wrong. We'll see, okay? Some small streaks. Already it's looking a little bit more grey than my skin tone. Now, based on my hand swatches last night as well, both of these foundations do set slightly deeper. So do leave it on for a little while if you are testing it in stores and trying to find your perfect shade. Okay, I've dotted on about 4 to 5 streaks now, and I'm still not getting full coverage. I think the color is not looking too bad. It's sort of neutralish enough. Coverage, I would say, is more of a medium buildable. It is definitely not full from the get-go. So if you're expecting something that goes on like camouflage cream, this is not it. I'm gonna go in with Sephora. I think I should use a little bit less because it looks like there's a lot more coverage for this one. Oh my god, okay, that's a lot of coverage. I did 3 dots. And I didn't even go in one more time with more product like I did with the Revlon side. Although I have to say this side is looking a little bit more natural. This is very high coverage. So they were not kidding about the full coverage claim, whereas this one it's not entirely accurate. Revlon, Sephora. Both are looking quite fine up close, and they're not emphasizing any pores or texture, and they're not really sitting in any fine lines or expression lines. I have to say I was a little bit more worried initially that the Sephora one would go on very, very matte and mask-like, especially because I have quite dry skin around most of the outer portions of my face. But so far, both sides are feeling quite comfortable. The coverage-wise, this definitely beats the Revlon. Okay, it's been about a minute and I think the foundation color has set to its final shade. It is looking okay right now. I don't look too obviously like I have 2 products on different sides of my face, at least color-wise. Coverage-wise, the Sephora definitely wins. This is a medium coverage at best, so whoever it is at Revlon that said that this is full coverage, I think you need to go try more foundations. My second test is trying to use a little bit more of the foundation as concealer to see if it builds nicely on itself. With some foundations, this can turn into a cakey mess, or it can start to look a little bit thick and heavy and very textured. So I don't foresee this happening with the Revlon actually, because I mean in terms of the feel, it is feeling very, very light compared to the Sephora side. Not that this side feels heavy, it just isn't as lightweight. If you look up close, it almost looks like there is no texture on this side for the Revlon foundation. So I did manage to build up some coverage under the eyes and around my nostrils where I have more discolorations, and right now it is looking like the same amount of correction as the Sephora gave, but this is one coat. I have an acne mark and a little bit more darkness here to conceal, so let's go in with more of the Sephora foundation. Next is just to go in with my standard concealer to see how things sit, whether they blend in nicely, whether they start to cake up and crease and all that. So I won't need too much concealer with either of these foundations, I think. Now the concealer blended in very nicely over both foundations. There was no grabbing in areas, it wasn't too hard to blend out, and it wasn't caking up on not moving. I think they both passed the concealer test. The only thing is up close, if you stare really close, there is a little bit more catching around fine lines on the Sephora side. I think partly because the foundation is much thicker and has a lot more pigment. On the Revlon side, it is lighter weight than the Sephora, so going on with more full coverage concealer isn't causing any of the pigments to settle into the fine lines around my eyes. So I think with the Sephora foundation, you may not want to layer foundation and concealer under the eyes because it can make a lot of the fine lines there more obvious. Now I'm going to go in with my Tarte Shape Tape Setting Powder. Just my usual stuff, no change in my routine. I'm just pressing it in, and I'm not using a ton of powder to bake. I just want to press and melt the powder right into my concealer and foundation. The powder is going on nicely on both sides as well. Nothing is grabbing. So I'm gonna go finish off the rest of my makeup and I'll be back in 3, 2, 1. I think so far both sides feel quite transfer proof to me. I'm not getting anything coming off once they set. It's not coming off on tissue or my hands or anything. There is no tacky feel. They are both quite matte at this point. The surprising thing to me is both of these still feel very comfortable on my skin, and I have dry skin. I was debating applying a hydrating primer like my Tarte Base Tape before going on with the foundation, but I decided not to, and I just want to feel how they sit and how they blend on the skin without the aid of a primer. So pleasant surprise that both of these are sitting quite nicely. On closer look, I will say again that the Sephora foundation is sort of cracking or creasing a little bit more around the dry fine lines under my eyes. Otherwise, I think both sides look pretty nice right now. I also am thanking my lucky stars that both shades set to what looks like the correct shade for me. So that's it for the application of first impressions portion of this review. I'm gonna go about my day and put this through the ringer and show you at the end of the night how both sides look. Ciao! Alright folks, it is now 8:46 p.m. I have been wearing the foundations for over 10 hours now, and it wasn't a particularly hot day and I wasn't sweating a ton, but I also only blotted once at about 5 p.m. and there was just a little bit of sebum and sweat, but none of my makeup was breaking down. And I'm gonna turn down the lights a little so you can have a better look. This is the Revlon Color Stay side. I have to say that this side looks completely perfect. Even around my oilier nostrils, it is not breaking down. Maybe minimal fading around this area under my nostrils where I'm a little bit red and I applied a little bit more coverage, but generally speaking, I mean, it is not going patchy, it is not caking up around my pores in the inner cheek area at all, which is pretty amazing. Even under my eyes, where I tend to get more creasing and cracking around this area from smiling throughout the day, nothing at all. It is looking very seamless. It still feels weightless. And I'm gonna just blot away any excess oil just to see if any foundation lifts off. Okay, there is some oil, but I don't see any foundation on the blotting paper. You can see it's worn away and gone a little patchy around my nostril area. It's looking a little bit cakey and greasy here. I had a little blemish right here, so I concealed it just a little bit with the foundation, and it's sort of worn down a little bit here as well. Around the eyes, I find the fine lines, the expression lines, a little bit more visible on this side of my face. The creases from smiling, talking, and everything through the day they stay there after they crease. So this side is definitely making my expression lines and fine lines more pronounced looking. So, I mean, coverage-wise, neither of these has really faded anywhere except around the nostrils for the Sephora Cream Foundation. Again, I'm going to do the blot test on the Sephora Cream Foundation side. Around the same areas. So this is the Sephora Matte Perfection Foundation side, and this is the Revlon Colorstay side. When I was looking up close before blotting, both sides looked the same. Even though this side expressed a little bit more oil onto my blotting sheets, my face didn't look oilier. And in fact, the pores on this side looked a little bit more perfect, a little bit more invisible to the naked eye versus this side, which was the Sephora foundation. I mean, coverage level, the Sephora Matte Perfection Foundation definitely is a winner. But I have to say, in terms of the overall texture, how good your skin looks up close, and then how well it sits and lasts through the day, even on my drier areas, I have to say I prefer the Revlon Colorstay. I think I'm surprised. I like both of these. Neither of them has oxidized or changed color through the day. Once they set, they just stayed that color. They didn't break down around my pores. Well, this one's slightly around the most oily parts of my face, but this one just really, really locked on and just stayed very, very even and very perfect looking. Right now, I'm gonna have to call this a tie. I guess it's good news because I found two new matte foundations that I actually really, really like. For short days, I think for a special event, I would go with this one because this gives you such beautiful instant full coverage and it looks very, very perfected. It will look very nice in photography as well, I believe. And this is going to stay looking really good for maybe 6-7 hours, I feel. And if you're going for a big event, you want to stay matte looking, and you don't think you're going to be sweating too much or getting too oily, then obviously this is going to do you very well. This one I would consider really good for long days, regular days, when you don't need full coverage, but you want a very nice, perfected, airbrushed finish that lasts for 10 to 12 hours. If you're at work and you don't have time to touch up or to check your makeup and all that, this one is a very good option, provided you can find a skin match. So that is the only downside for the Revlon Colorstay range in general. The lack of shades in some countries, especially in Asia, where we don't really get a lot of shade options. If you can find a match though, definitely do recommend this one. Ironically, if you're on a very, very tight budget, I would say go with the non-drugstore one because this is close to $9 cheaper than the Revlon Colorstay. You get the same amount of product, you'll use a lot less each time, and this can also double up as concealer because of the high coverage. So this will go a much longer way than this one would. But just for general daily wear, I will say that I prefer this. If you've tried one or both of these, let me know what you think of them, whether you love them, whether you hate them. And if you found this helpful, please give me a thumbs up, and I will see you soon. Bye!